Hello and welcome back. This is Candice from Candoodle. I hope you've all had a restful holiday season and your 2021 is off to a better start. I thought I'd start the new year with a clean and simple card with some creative DIY masking. So let's get started. So I'm just starting off with my Guillotine trimmer and I'm cutting a piece of 110-pound paper at 5.5 and then at 4.25. So this is going to be the same size as one of my card fronts, but we're not going to use it as a card front. We're going to use it as a mask. So I'm just taking one of my Hero Arts nesting circle dies and mounting that in the top center. And then I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine and remove the washi tape. And now we are going to use this as our mask. So I'm just washi taping it down to my card base, making sure that it is nice and centered, which is really easy because I use the same size as my card base for the mask. So now I'm going to come in with some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink and my life-changing blender brushes, and I'm just going to blend on some waves with the Lawn Fawn Ocean Wave Stencil. So this stencil comes in a 3-pack, and as you can see, there are the waves which you can blend, and then it also has the mask on the other side of the stencil. So if I wanted to, I could have only blended 2 or 3 waves and then use the mask to blend over top of the waves without covering them, a nice lighter color for the sky. But I wanted this to look like the little shark was out floating in the middle of the ocean, so there was no sky around him. That's something that I find terrifying and why I will probably never go on a cruise, but nonetheless, that is how I wanted the look of this card to be. So I'm just coming in, and for the last one, I didn't have enough space to add a wave, so I'm just coming in towards the top of the mask and blending it as if a wave was there. And then once that is done, I'm going to peel off the washi tape and do the final reveal, which is my favorite part. And there we have it, a creative way to mask. So now I'm going to come in with the Avery Elle Peekaboo Boat Stencil, and I'm going to use the little inner tube and the hammerhead shark and his little fins and stamp those down. I'm going to be using some Gina black amalgam ink because we are going to be Copic coloring these. I did stamp them down twice, as I usually do with most of my images, just to make sure I get a clear impression, but this is also the first time I'm using those stamps. I figured while I was here, I may as well do my sentiment, so I'm just taking my MISTI Creative Corners, which is that L-shaped ruler tool, and I'm just using that to make sure my sentiment is nice and straight and I don't mess up my card after I've done all of that masking and blending. So now I'm going to do some Copic coloring, and as always, the colors I use will be listed on the screen. This one is super simple. I'm not being really careful with where the shadows and things like that are. I'm just decided that I want the shadow on the left and the highlight on the right. And for the shark, I am using my neutral Copics, which I don't use a ton, or at least I hadn't before this, but they're actually a really nice gray color. I always seem to gravitate towards the cool grays. I'm not sure why. Those were some of the first Copics that I got, so I think I just got comfortable with them, but I really like the way that the neutral grays look, and it's actually, I'm going to do this card as a series and use the stamp set a couple of times, and it looks quite good blended if you do some of the other characters with the warm grays. So I will be using my neutral Copics a lot more, is the spark notes of that story. You can see I am turning the page around quite a bit when I'm coloring the fins, and that's because I didn't quite know where the highlights should be and how the fins were going to sit on the body, mostly because I stamped them kind of wonky and upside down. So I had to look up what a hammerhead shark looked like online, so I had an idea, and it'll make more sense where I put the highlights once you see the way that the fins get glued down later. As for the inner tube, I wanted it to be the usual yellow color that we're used to seeing at like water parks and things like that. I just thought it would be a nice color to go with the blue as well. So again, I'm just doing a simple 3-color blend, and I am adding some highlights towards the top, and then I'm keeping my darkest colors towards the bottom or any of the creases of that inner tube. And I usually go lightest to darkest and then darkest back out to the lightest, and it gives a really nice blend, especially because the Copics do dry back a bit. So even if you're coloring and you're like, oh boy, this is looking like a hot mess, stick with it, give it a second to dry back, and it usually ends up looking much better. And you know what? Practice over perfection, right? So then I added some blue to those little stripes on the tube, and then my coloring is done. I did fussy cut those off screen, and then I'm just coming in with my X-Acto knife to cut that tube. I start with a smaller cut and then move out towards the edges, and I'm just using an old cutting board that has tape on it for some reason, so pardon the reflections. And once I'm done with that, I am going to come in with a Copic multi-liner and just go over that line to make sure it looks nice and crisp, because that's what's going to show at the front. Then I am just going to scooch my little shark inside and pull it up a tad above where I want it to sit. That way I can squeeze some glue and then just put it back down and not have to worry about how it's going to sit. And there we go. I am finally going to glue down those little fins, so now the shadows and highlights make some sense. And then I decided that because this card was so simple, I did want to pop him up a little bit to give him some lift from the background. So I'm just coming in and putting some foam tape all around. I like to be a little bit generous with my foam tape, especially because I might end up mailing this card because I don't really see any of my friends in real life anymore, sadly. You know, COVID, that's how life is going these days. So I popped him up on our little masked area, and of course, knowing me, no card is done until there are some sequins and some bling on there. So I just added 5 little things from Lucy's cards to jazz up the card, and just like that, it is done. I hope you enjoyed today's clean and simple card. I thought it was a nice start to the new year, but I will be back in coming weeks showing you ideas for how to step up this stamp set and give some other creative ideas. As always, please give this video a like if you did enjoy it, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I have lots of exciting things planned for this coming new year. And as always, you can always reach me over on Instagram at Candoodle Creations. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!